after spending quite a bit of time off the air and in the lab because animation takes a long time. Adventure Time is finally back in action with Fionna and Cake Season 2, rolling up with a premiere that lays the foundation for the season with magical mortal wounds, relationship drama, and a brand new dilemma for Fionna to overcome as she re-examines her life prior to becoming a hero and faces off against her petty former boss, Queenie. Just like Season 1, Max has sent me the first 7 episodes in advance for review, and I'll get a last chunk of the season at a later date. So let me tell y'all, this feels like a completely different show when it comes to both its structure and how it balances the screen time between Fionnaworld and New, the 2 major locations of this season. A decision that makes Season 2 feel even more like a direct sequel to the original series than Season 1 did. That said, both seasons definitely take a couple episodes to get the ball rolling, but that doesn't mean this premiere leaves us without anything to chew on. So let's run through all the major takeaways and details you may have missed in the Hare and the Sprout. Is he seriously going to fuck that cat? And before we dive in, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to throw it a like and subscribe to the roundtable with notifications on so you never miss a video. Season 2 gets the ball rolling with a stylized recap of Season 1 from Astrid, the huge Fionna and Cake fangirl who got to meet them during their brief time anew. Nearly every episode in this season features a cold open that's depicted in a unique art style, usually a vignette that ties into the story or theme of the episode. A key detail in this recap that the show wants us to remember is that Fionna is a new version of Finn. Although multiverse hopping isn't the big gimmick this season, it's still innately a multiverse-oriented story, so it's reasonable to assume that the connection between these two will be pivotal to the story of this season, which is implied in the episode itself, with Fionna bearing a cut that resembles Finn's wound. That said, you definitely shouldn't be thinking of Fionna as just Finn, especially at this point. They have always been, and will continue to be, 2 distinct characters. Even more so now that this season is diving into the retcons of Fionnaworld, and how, despite a slight hint of deja vu, the inhabitants of this world have a different history than those in the land of Ooh. Really, I think Finn and Fionna are akin to siblings, a brother and sister who share a lot of the same quirks, and they constantly remind people of the other in varying ways. But ultimately, they have different interests and desires. They're more like if Dipper and Mabel were separated at birth, as opposed to just being 2 Finns. Marceline is just as invested in Finn's love life as all the shippers who have been tuned in since middle school, excited and ready to gossip at the idea of Finn and Huntress Wizard becoming an item again. Though this is obviously a pretty telling line, as Finn and Huntress Wizard never explicitly got together in the original series. Meaning, in the time between Come Along With Me and the start of Fionna and Cake, the 2 have had an on and off relationship that's plagued with commitment issues, despite how much the 2 care for each other. Though really, the commitment issues are one-sided, as we know Finn is a lover boy, and Huntress has always been into him from the jump, but felt as if they shouldn't tie each other down. A philosophy that hasn't really been explained prior to this season, but it will be something we get to explore now that Finn's life is on the line, on top of us spending plenty of time with Huntress Wizard. Now that Fionnaworld is canonized and freed from the shackles of Simon's mind, they finally have access to a bigger TV catalog, instead of just watching Cheers over and over like a hyperfixated teen in the 80s. Not only is the sitcom still a smash hit, but Fionnaworld now has shows like Friends, Gilmore Girls, and Sister Sister, establishing that this universe, despite technically being set in the present day, is sort of an amalgamation of the 90s and 2000s. Cheers ended in 93, Friends and Sister Sister premiered in 94, while Gilmore Girls premiered in the year 2000. Keep in mind, this is taking place only a couple of weeks after Season 1. I don't think Hollywood just started pumping these shows out. I'm pretty sure Fiona's Wish retconned these shows into existence as the world cemented itself as a millennial's nostalgic wonderland. Side note, it totally tracks that Fionna would be an anime girly. She was already having Sailor Moon dreams before embarking on a life-changing adventure, and I'm not sure anime even existed before the world got canonized. Although watching this anime seems to have planted the seeds for Fionna to have a nightmare. Another mission in Season 2 is honing in on the differences between Cake and Jake. An immediate difference is that Cake now has her own apartment right next door to Fionna. At first, it's wild to think that they wouldn't be roommates, since Finn and Jake lived in the treehouse together. But then you remember that cats are more independent than dogs. Allegedly. Milkshake spends most of his existence sleeping in my lap, and he'll raise hell if he's disturbed. Having her own space, but still being in close proximity to Fionna, maintaining easy access to her best friend, is definitely in line for an anthropomorphic cat. Fionna introduces the inverse of bacon pancakes, waffle bun hot dogs. It's endearing that she's the one showing this to Cake, when Jake was the one who innovated to this degree in our Prime Ooh universe, passing off his quirky rituals to Finn as his brother/father figure/role model. You get the idea. Instead of Jake being the big sibling who steps up to show Finn the ropes and helps the ordinary human navigate through a magical world, Fionna is the one who steps up to help her magical cat navigate through a mundane human world. Let's run through the new Fionnaworld variants in this episode. With the crack on this child's forehead, I can only assume that these two walking through the city are Glassboy and See-Through Princess from Obsidian. When Fionna gets berated by Queenie, we can spot Magic Woman, Guy Betty, and some dude that looks like Roy from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. We also surprisingly got introduced to the Fionnaworld version of Sir Slicer, Lady Cutter. Remember Sir Slicer? He kept grilling Finn for having no armor, only to get screwed over by the weight of his own. Yeah, kind of a deep cut. Lady Cutter has a small altercation over cocoa powder with Fionna, but this felt like it was meant to be a notable introduction instead of just a fun callback. So I'm assuming we'll see more of her eventually. I imagine she'll be at odds with Gary in the sweet spot at some point, given the length she's going for some cocoa powder here. The woman takes her baking very seriously. Alright, let's talk about the shape-shifting elephant cat in the room. Cake and Lord Monochromicorn are gonna be a thing in this universe. Now look, we see Cake trying to impress him by giving herself more humanoid proportions, instead of just being a giant talking jelly bean. And she was originally a talking magical cat before the great retcon. And Monochromicorn used to be, well, a Monochromicorn. There's a lot in favor of this ship not being totally weird. But like, she was shitting in a litter box like 2 weeks ago, dude. She couldn't even speak English or any language but meow, meow, meow. As far as Monochromicorn knows, he's been a human all of his life, so I'm sorry. I can't help but to hit the side eye, even if Cake is now closer to Rouge the Bat or Nicole Watterson instead of someone like Garfield. That said, I am endeared by their dynamic. It's reminiscent of Jake and Reinacorn, where the American audience presumably wouldn't understand a lick of Korean, so it just looks like Jake is the only one who understands her. But in this case, Monochromicorn is completely silent, yet he and Cake are always on the same page. They share the ability to understand each other without words being spoken. And despite his silence, he shows that he listens to her and pays attention to what she likes. A yapper and her nonchalant man. It's really sweet to see. Even if I can't stop harping on the fact that this whole situation is kinda weird. But hey, that's adventure time, right? We got a much needed update on Simon following the end of season 1, and as it turns out, he's already acted on his desire to move out of the futuristic human city and is currently crashing with Marceline and Bubblegum, though it's a tad awkward given Bubblegum's history of Ice King. Though I do like that Simon addresses it in a way where he acknowledges Ice King as a part of himself, as he's no longer separating the two personas, which is the polar opposite of season 1, where he vehemently denied the exact same thing. Simon is now teaching at Wizards, which was introduced in the 4th Disneyland special, Wizard City, continuing to spread his knowledge of magical artifacts to the masses. And look man, I get it, this might just be his calling, and a class like this absolutely has its place at Wizard School. Learning from someone who suffered the effects of a magical artifact for hundreds of years makes sense to me. But Simon's whole arc around season 1 was centered around moving forward and letting go of the past. So something about him sticking to the same job he had in pre-apocalyptic times that's literally centered around history kinda bums me out a bit. Homie should be the best-selling author of a YA fantasy series. Wizards actually gives us the return of the Wizard City gang. Peppermint Butler, Kadebra, the niece of Abracadaniel, and Blaine. And they all look significantly older. Wizard City, along with Obsidian, took place presumably around 10 years after Come Along With Me. So with Finn being in his 20s, and he should still be 29 here, I think it's been like 3 to 4 years since Wizard City. So the gang's probably in their senior year. Simon visits Shoes Goose's grave after, killing him during his old depressive spiral to find Gold Betty. Yeah, that was rough. He leaves an orange on his tombstone, which kinda just feels weird, as rhyming was this dude's whole thing, and nothing rhymes with orange. So it's either some kind of gesture, maybe he's trying to say, you'll never be forgotten just like nothing will ever rhyme with orange, or he's just giving Shoes Goose the finger. This orange is then swooped in by a lion who brings it to Finn, who is also surrounded by a cow and an eagle, though he's hallucinating and seeing all of these animals as Huntress Wizard. Finn's fallen ill and has sustained a mortal wound from the branches of the bush that he was impaled by in the heart of the forest back in the second episode, Simon Petrikov. Now here's my theory. While it's entirely possible Finn's training animals and his delirious state has convinced him that he's hit the Huntress harem jackpot, what if both the command he has over these animals and the hallucinations he's suffering from are a direct result of his wound? What if Finn's somehow connected to the heart of the forest and it has animals at his beck and call, as if they instinctively know he's in peril and are doing what they can to nourish him back to health? Again, I haven't seen the whole season, so any theories I make are with the knowledge that they won't be proven or debunked within the next few episodes. There are a handful of recasts in this season, so let's just do a quick roll call. Huntress Wizard is now voiced by Ashley Birch, which doesn't surprise me because the Earth will experience heat death before Huntress Wizard gets a consistent voice actor. Luckily, Birch does an incredible job here. Gary is now voiced by Harvey Gullen, who also voices characters in Hell of a Boss, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and the Garfield movie. And tragically, Donald Glover could not voice Marshall Lee this season as he was on tour last year before ending the tour after getting sick, so now he's voiced by Chris Collins. In my opinion, as someone who's watched every episode of Atlanta a million times, Collins does a great job of imitating Glover, but he's not really trying to do Glover's voice for Marshall Lee. It's not as chill, but he gets the job done. And hey, he has big shoes to fill. Go easy on the guy. Hunter brings Fionna a rose bush, and she seems to scratch her hand on the thorns, forming a wound that looks identical to Finn's. I refuse to believe this is a coincidence or that it means nothing in the long run. I'm adamant this is a sign that whatever's going on with Finn may be affecting all of his counterparts across the multiverse. Fionna, Farmworld Finn, Baby Finn, they all might be in peril if Finn doesn't pull through. Or maybe Finn is actually going through some freaky forest metamorphosis, which still might affect every single Finn. This thorn on Fionna's hand also harkens back to Finn's grass sword arm that regenerated after he lost his original arm trying to resolve daddy issues. This imagery supports the idea that Fionna's arm is going to go bye-bye before or during the season finale. Or maybe having this cut form on Fionna's hand instead of her back is alluding to her losing an arm before the end of the season, something that's also foreshadowed in her creepy dream. But come on, this is a rose bush. Finn was thrown into a bush of roses on it. There's definitely a connection. And I'm sure whatever happening is specifically because of this bush, as we've seen counterparts drop dead in other worlds without the others perishing. Fionna's arc in this season is something we don't really get with stories like this. We're seeing the hero not only return to their normal life, but confront how they lived that life before becoming someone that was celebrated by the town. She feels unworthy of the title of a hero and all the praise she's received, because she was an unabashed loser who never put effort into anything, as she thought she was above it all. Now that she's had some growth, she sees how she was kinda living like a bum and deeply regrets it, afraid that now she'll really screw up and take everyone down with her. These insecurities are only vocalized by Queenie, but manifest in a nightmare based off the anime she watched earlier. Now my interpretation is that her desire for adventure to actually be a hero has caused her to inadvertently harm her friends, and her attempts to fix everything will only make things worse as it leads them right into their demise. Evidently, Fionna feels guilty for the lives that have already been lost through her adventures, as Martin of all people worked his way into the nightmare, and if you recall, he got his ass absolutely cooked in Vampire World. So yes, she is in mourning. Everything she's been through has affected her, even if she's probably repressing it like Finn tends to, but just know she's grieving the decent version of Martin that didn't even get to become a certified bum. This stream isn't saying that Fionna is going to brutally slaughter her friends in real life, but rather that she's capable of acting reckless when chasing after a dream, which then causes her loved ones to get swept up in the collateral damage. And Fionna is immediately tested on the message of this nightmare, as it's revealed Queenie owns the property that the sweet spot is on, and just to spite her former employee, she decides to kick Gary out of his business and repossess the land. Obviously, Fionna will fight for the sweet spot and prove that she's worthy of being a hero, but again, she might end up getting a little too lost in this pursuit and hurt the people closest to her. Let's also not forget that at the end of the day, although Marshall detests his mother, the worst case scenario is him relying on her for finances and a roof over his head. Losing the sweet spot truly does screw over Gary more than anyone else, which is why he's the only one who marches to his death in this nightmare. When Huntress Wizard encounters the bush, she gives it a special special greeting, indicating that it actually might be regarded as a deity that Huntress's clan worships or treats with the utmost respect. Also, Huntress Wizard is about to get jumped by the shape-shifting bear that attacked Finn and Simon, and given that she herself can shapeshift, you could probably piece together that there might be a connection there. And that's all we have for episode 1. Comment down below your thoughts, theories, and interpretations, and keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Instagram at AllTrickVox and at Roundtable Vids. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable notifications on so you never miss a Fionna and Cake video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace!